Hi, thank you for being here. I'm Christy Lemire from RogerEbert.com and KPCC Film Week, and I'm so thrilled that you are all here. This amazing packed house for opening night, this incredible film you just saw. I had the pleasure of writing about it for Ebert, and now I have the pleasure of chatting with the brilliant woman who made it. Give it up for Lulu Wang. How are you? This weekend's nuts for you, huh?
Yeah. It's exciting.
In all the best possible ways.
Yeah.
Can we start at the end with that ending? Because it's a perfect ending, and it's so hard to stick the landing. At what point did you realize that you wanted that to be your ending?
I always wanted the ending not to be about whether she lives or dies, even though that's kind of part of, and I'll say why that part is important. But first I wanted it to be about the spirit of Nai Nai, because, you know, regardless of whether she lived longer, or, we all lose the people we love at some point. And so the movie had to be about something greater than that, because even when she does lose her Nai Nai, like, what does she still have? She carries on the spirit of Nai Nai, and so that's what the ending was for me. And then the decision to include that real bit of footage, one, as a tribute to my real grandmother, but also because if you came into this film being convinced of one way or the other, to lie or not to lie, for me in real life, like the fact that she outlived her prognosis is always going to influence how I feel about the decision that my family made. So even if I believe in the value of truth and that people should, be told, and I would want to know, certainly, I can't avoid the fact that, my whole family is like, well, the evidence is there, and so, we'll never know, right? Like, there's no way to go back and say, well, if she was told, would the result have been different? But that's kind of why I wanted to include that, so that it is part of the conversation when people discuss, was it the right thing to do or not?
And she still does not know.
She still does not know.
Right.
She came to set, as my wonderful producers, Danny Melia, Andrew Miano, Anita Guo, would all attest to. They all met my grandmother, and she was on set, and we all hung out with her, and we just had to tell the crew not to tell her.
So what does she think your movie's about?
She thinks it's she met all the actors, so she thinks it's about our family going back to China for a reunion because of a wedding. Right.
It's all true.
It's all true.
You didn't lie to Nai Nai. Good job.
I didn't lie to her.
And that is actually your little Nai Nai. That is your grandmother's
Yes,
sister. That
my
really is her.
Yeah, my great aunt plays herself in the film, as does her dog Ellen. That is the real Ellen. Yeah.
And I understand that it took a little bit of coaxing to get little Nai Nai to say yes to be in the film.
Yeah, it did, because I think, she just kept saying, I'm a normal person. I'm not an actor. I'm not a star. And I don't want to ruin your movie with my fat face. That's what she would say. And, so we tried to audition other people. We tried to find someone else, but we couldn't. I just felt she was the best one. She has the most adorable face. And so I put her on camera, and I convinced her to do it. But it was hard for her, because it meant she had to revisit all of this experience, and so we were really worried that it was going to be traumatizing for her. And so Danny and our producer Jane, they sat her down and actually talked her through, because for someone who's never done a movie, what that actually entails, right? On an emotional level, but also on a physical level. She's 68 years old, to be on set for 12 hours at a time. And so prepared her for all of it, and she was still like, I want to do this.
Well, she's great. She's a natural. She's awesome. So this is your story. This is your life. At what point in the process of learning about what was going on with your grandmother did you decide there's a film in here?
I think pretty early on, once there was this idea that we weren't going to tell her and that we were going to go for a wedding instead, I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. And it was this mixed feeling of like, I don't want to do this, and of dread and sadness, but also of like curiosity of like, how is this going to turn out, you know? And I was actually working on my first feature, Posthumous, which is a kind of classic screwball romantic comedy. And then this happened to me, and I was like, well, this is why I love screwball so much, because they keep happening in my real life, you know? But the twist of it is that, you know, it's also just really sad. It's kind of the screwball setup, and it's kind of absurd and ridiculous, but at the same time, it's about how a family deals with grief in different ways.
Your movie is so funny, so unexpectedly funny, and never mawkish. And it's a really tough tonal balance that you have found. How did you pull that off? How did you maintain a truth to that balance the whole time through?
Well, as the actors will say, they didn't know it was a comedy. And sometimes even as I was writing the script, we were like, well, it's a comedy, should we make it funnier? I always knew that the comedy would come out more on the screen and not on the page, because I wasn't writing jokes. There were no gags in the script. So it was really about just the composition, figuring out how to juxtapose different things, different people, you know, within the same frame, like in the photo studio scene, or just like the composition itself. Sometimes sometimes the slightly exaggerated, or even some of the melodrama. Like I wrote the uncle's speech to be both heartbreaking and funny, because he's the one for the longest time that was repeating like, don't break down, you can't tell her, and then he's the one who, you know, ends up breaking down. And when I experienced that in real life, I kept looking around being like, this is crazy. Like, this is hilarious. Is it hilarious? But sad at the same time. And, you know, the rest of the family was just sad because they were like, this is, but I was the one that's like, oh my God, she's going to know now. And so that's, I just wanted to kind of capture like all of the things that I felt, where it was like, should I cry or should I laugh? I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
You have to laugh sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So what did your family think, though, when you said, I'm going to make a movie about Nai and about this situation that we're all in?
Well, first I did the story for This American Life, and that's kind of how it became a film, because nobody at first, when I pitched it, wanted to make this specific film. They wanted to make it more broad, or, you know, more American, meaning like not subtitled, or more Chinese, meaning Billie wouldn't be the main character. I would have to invent a Chinese character. And so I was sort of like, this is a story about somebody in the middle, right? And that's the story I have to tell. So I did This American Life, and we had to interview my family for that. And I said, you know, is that okay? And they were like, sure, you know, she's never going to hear it because it's in America. Sure, you know, are you getting paid for it? Great. So we, you know, put the story together, and then it aired. And then, you know, 48 hours later, I started getting calls from producers. We, you know, set up the project with Depth of Field and Big Beach. And I said to my parents again, I was like, well, now we're going to make a movie, you know? And they were like, great, so you're going to start by writing the script? And I said, yeah. And they're like, well, you know, it might never get made. Just write the script. They're paying you. Great. So every step of the way, they just kept was always supportive, because they're like, you know, as long as you're paying the bills and people are like letting you do work, like why wouldn't we support that? You know, there's no way they would be like, yeah, no, you should say no to that check and go back to struggling, right? But then the, you know, film got made, and then we got into Sundance, and it was the same thing. They were like, well, it's Sundance, you know, it's this indie film festival. Maybe it'll never be out in the world. You never know. You've made films before. They've gone to festivals. They've gone nowhere. So, you know.
That's cynical.
Oh, yeah. Very cynical. I mean, it wasn't until we were at Eccles, and it was like, they were like, well, you know, it's still a festival. Like, literally until we had distribution, and we got distribution in China, like, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And I said, guys, like, can we seriously talk about this now? Because now it's going to be not only in, you know, Western theaters, but, like, in China, with a major distributor, which means there's going to be marketing on television. You can't tell me she doesn't watch TV. Like, you know, and it's even on the Chinese IMDb now. And so, yeah, they're discussing what to do. Little Nine said, we'll just tell her that movies are fictional and that all of that stuff was made up.
It's a leaping off point. And the title is different in Chinese, right, Amanda?
Yeah, the Chinese title is literally "Don't Tell Her."
Again, it's a screwball comedy.
Yeah.
There you go. Let's talk about Awkwafina because she's a goddess. She's amazing in this. And she had, so Ocean's 8 and Crazy Rich Asians had not yet come out when you cast her in this to play you, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
What did you see in her at that point that told you that she was the one?
Yeah, at first I didn't, I knew her from, I said to Danny, I was like, the girl who did my vag, that's who you think should play me. From Queens, and I didn't know she was that she wanted to do dramatic acting, but we met for coffee, and then she sent an audition tape. It was really the audition tape that convinced me. I mean, during coffee, she was just like, I really, really want to do this. Like, I will do anything to do this. Like, I have my, I was raised by my Chinese grandmother. I really connect to this story, and so she sent in this tape, and so much of the audition was actually her being silent, as she is through the movie, right? Because she's actually not allowed to express herself. And she was reading with someone off camera, and you could just tell by the way she was listening that she was truly listening. Sometimes, like, if an actor's not delivering lines, they're just kind of waiting but she was, you could tell she was processing all of these complicated emotions, and you could see it in her eyes. That's a really difficult thing for an actor, where to be both very blank but also very expressive at the same time. And so that was a quality that made me cast her.
She's such a natural. Like, the authenticity she brings to all the breakout comic scenes elsewhere, they're there in dramatic ways too.
Yeah.
So how much are you guiding her as far as it being your story to share with her to portray, and how much are you saying find the character yourself?
Yeah, I told her very early on, because she and I are very different people, and so very early on I was like, look, you're not playing me. Billie is not me. Billie is a conduit for the audience. She's a vessel for everybody, every immigrant who might have this experience of being in between different worlds, and put your own experiences into her, and just be present. That was the most important thing. At every moment I said, I don't want you thinking about me and what I did. I want you to think about you and what you would do, or how you would feel in this situation. I want you to think about your own grandmother. She's very close with her grandmother, and one day she will lose her. And so I said, just think about that. This is your grandmother. And once she kind of clicked into that and didn't lean on comedy, because in the beginning she wanted to lean on comedy because that's the muscle she's used to using. Whenever she feels tension, she'll like crack a joke in real life too, right? And she'll crack a joke and dissipate the tension in the room. So in a way it became this tool for her to survive life. And so I had to actually just convince her, like, if you feel uncomfortable, which she did, going back to China, there's like all of these complicated emotions. I said, just, really embrace those and channel it into the scene.
What was it like for you to go back to China and shoot this?
It was really magical because, when I was there before for this wedding, I was like the lone Westerner in my family. I had all of these complicated emotions that I wanted to express, but there was no one I could talk to. And I would try to talk to my parents, but they had their own stuff that they were dealing with. My dad is losing his mother, and my mother has her complicated relationship with my grandma. And so I felt like, I was crazy by the end of the trip, because I kept saying, this is crazy. And everyone would be like, what are you talking about? And so then to go back with all of these people, crew and producers and everything, who were there to see it from my point of view, and also to like just bring together my two worlds. Like, my whole life I've been negotiating two different worlds. My family, China, that culture, and then me as an independent American, and my career and my friends. And so this film kind of just brought all of that together and allowed my grandma to see me on set doing what I love to do, and for my producers to become part of the family, and they were, eating dinner with my grandma.
And the actors got to know your family members that they were portraying.
Mm-hmm.
How helpful was that?
Oh, I mean, for them, they said it was everything, because they would go and have coffee, like Tai Ma with my dad and Dinah Lynn with my mom, and they just details that aren't necessarily in the film, but you feel it because they have this sort of depth of the history. It's an actor's dream to be able to do that kind of research. And oftentimes, Ty would joke with me and be like, I know things about you that, you don't even know, or about your dad. And I would be like, thanks, okay, great.
You must have had a lot of folks of various cultural backgrounds come to you after seeing this and just share their own experiences. What has the emotional connection been like with audience members to your story?
Really intense, because I think so many audiences who've seen this are like, oh my God, we did that to my grandmother or grandfather or whatever, and never really had a understanding of why, and never really was able to process and come to terms with it. And if I didn't make the movie, I don't think I would have come to terms with it either. So much of the research and exploration that I did around this question was because I was working on it as a project. Otherwise, I don't know that I would have been like, Mom and Dad, can I interview you? Can I talk to you? And so, yeah, I've heard from people who are not just like Asians or Asian Americans, but people from all over the world, even in Western countries, who said, we did the same thing, and I always struggled with it because I didn't know if it was the right thing to do.
And how do you feel about it now?
The same. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily changed my perspective, that it's like one way is right or one way is wrong. For me, it was not about finding the answers. It was just about asking the questions and seeing it from both sides, And I asked my parents, I said, well, would you want me to lie to you guys? And my mom was like, no, are you crazy? Even though she was like, you got to respect their culture and, stay with this plan for my grandma. And she said, but that's also like a silly question, because in America, the doctor would never not tell us. And so she said, the question you should really be asking is that if, me or your dad got sick and we found out, would we tell you? That made me real. Now I'm constantly paranoid.
That's your sequel. Yeah. There you go. Speaking of questions, we have time for 2, because Lulu has to go across town to the ArcLight next. Right here, please, yes. He asked about the pulling away, the last shot of Nana in the background from the car, and also did the fake wedding turn out okay?
Yeah, they're still together. They live in Japan. That last shot was like a shot that I always knew from the beginning, even as I was writing, that I wanted to shoot it that way, just to really hold on her, because, I mean, that's what it feels like, when you're leaving. They don't leave. Every time I'm there, whenever we get in, they will walk you until the very last moment, and they will watch until the car disappears. And you have to kind of do the same, and you're just watching and holding on. And so I wanted to, do it uncut. And we actually drop all of the audio out. And my editor says that's very rare. You never go to pure silence. You always have room tone. But for that moment, we dropped to pure silence, and it feels like the air is sucked out of the room. And it's, for me, that's what it feels like.
Let's do one more. A woman. I want a question from a woman, please.
Gender equality. Woo.
There must be somebody in here who's a woman with a question. Right here, yes. Thank you.
I kind of am still unclear about the fake wedding. Did they not get married and they just had a reception, or?
In China, it's just a reception. That is the wedding. So, I mean, I think even in here, it's like churches, you don't, until you get the document in courthouse that you're not officially married. But yeah, they got the document.
So they weren't married?
They were.
They were married.
Yep. Let's do one more. Another woman. Right here in front, please. Thank you.
The question was about whether or not I intended to make you people cry. I wouldn't say I'm being all right, how do I get some tears out of people, I think I just wanted to capture how I really felt, both the humor, both the joy, and I think the joy and the comedy makes it that much more powerful when you're leaving, that it makes the sadness that much sadder, and so I wanted it to be powerful because it's it's the last time you're going to see her, and all of the things that you've experienced in these few days is joyful, but it's also, as you're pulling away, like all these memories are coming to your mind, and you're like, this is probably the last time, you know. And it's because and that's probably what everybody's thinking throughout, which is kind of why all of the humor, everything is also heightened, and the joy, because everyone's really present in the moment. But grandmothers are the linchpins to so many families, right? And so I've talked to many people who are like, when my grandmother was gone, like, we don't reunite anymore. And that's what I was thinking, right? Is that, once Nai's gone, like, would I have any reason to come back here? And with the rest of the family, would we all, like, come together in the future?
We got to go. You're amazing. Thank you so much for your
Thank you
gorgeous
so much.
film. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for coming.